I will be co-presenting with Bobby Williams. My name is Shiva Bissessar. I'm the Managing Director of Pinaka Technology Solutions, focusing on strategic ICT and information security. How I got involved with the whole topic of digital currency was via, I did an MSc thesis in 2013 looking at digital currency, Bitcoin transactions. And I actually met Bobby Williams and Peter Nichols in the same room 2014 at a CTU conference, and that's how we started talking about this issue and this topic, which eventually got into a study, which is now transforming into the ITU workshop. So it's been a flow over the past 3 years. I'm quite proud of it. So let's just hand it over to Bobby to start.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Bobby Williams. It says Robert Crane Williams there. That's my formal name, but everybody calls me Bobby. I work for ECLAC, Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. As the Deputy Director of the Subregional Headquarters for the Caribbean, addressed us this morning and told us ECLAC is a public policy think tank. And as part of developing public policy and being a think tank, we've been thinking about the issue of digital currency. And when you do a lot of thinking, you want to get somebody smart. So we brought on Shiva to help us out to develop this study that we've been working on and recently published a few months ago on opportunities and risks associated with the advent of digital currency in the Caribbean. You all should have gotten a copy of this. It's inside that purple envelope. What this study is really is it's the background paper. It's the introductory reading to, if you want to know about digital currency in the Caribbean, we suggest this is the place you start. I know I'm in a room full of experts here, so maybe a lot of this is, perhaps you know this already. But if you have colleagues who are trying to figure out, well, what is digital currency about? What is mobile money? How does it relate to the Caribbean? This is the document for you. This is just the broad abstract of what's in it. The bottom line on this is that it's to present Caribbean authorities with enough information for them to begin evaluation of treatment of digital currencies within their own territory. So this is the basics, and we hope that it can be used as such. Now, we did a lot of research to get to this point, starting with a couple of, we call them expert group meetings, where we bring in all sorts of actors with an interest in this topic. In this case, we brought in e-commerce providers, software developers, people from the government, the central bank. We got anti-money laundering experts. We wanted to get everybody in the room so we could hear all the perspectives to do this. And so as part of that, as part of these 2 expert group meetings we had, we issued a couple of reports. And I will speak to the reports because while Shiva wrote this, I wrote most of what's in the reports of the expert group meetings. What the expert group meeting discovered was that, yes, digital currencies, and by digital currencies, you can have digital currency, cryptocurrency, virtual currency, mobile money. It's all kind of a grab bag, isn't it? In this case, we're talking about digital currencies to mean blockchain-enabled technologies, Bitcoin, but also, who knows what's coming after that, as well as mobile money, because that is there's so much potential for that in this region. These are interesting technologies, and they're here, they're emerging, but they're having trouble gaining acceptance, especially as of this meeting happened at the end of 2014. And so there's been some progress since then. There's a bit more acceptance by regulators, as we've heard in the case of Barbados. Still reaching the consumer, I think, is going to be a challenge. There's a need to build trust among customers, acceptance, and part of the way you can build trust among customers is building trust among regulators, having them say okay, we've looked at this. We are insisting that people in this business follow these rules. This is what is expected of them. Now that we have a situation where everybody can operate, these are the rules. Now go to it. Without that, the digital currency, mobile money is really going to be held back. This talks about public acceptance, and it says that many tools, there's a lot of concern about digital currency, a lot of concern about anonymity, for example. Everybody says, or everybody used to say, well, Bitcoin, it's for, it's anonymous. You can just buy whatever you want, and you can buy drugs or guns or whatever, and nobody can trace you. And there's some truth to that, but it's not the whole truth. The blockchain is it's a public base of information. So anything that gets bought or sold on the blockchain is publicly visible. There are ways of hiding things, hiding who paid for what on there, but there's also ways of figuring that out. So there's kind of a cat and mouse game in terms of anonymity versus sunshine. And that's just going to be a fact of this technology. What we figured out is that this technology is here. You can't prohibit it because it's going to continue to exist whether regulators want it or not. If you do prohibit it, it's going to be underground. Better to put some sunshine on it. There are points of regulation that can be addressed, namely exchanges, like what BIT is trying to run. The point where digital currency is traded for, well, the phrase is fiat money, but I just consider it money. I think fiat money is actually some of the greatest monetary technology we've had in the past 100 years. The point where digital currency can be traded for fiat money, that's where regulation can be added to make sure that taxes are paid, make sure that there's no money laundering. That's where the regulation can be, but it's not perfect. If there are transactions going on, Bitcoin to Bitcoin or some other blockchain currency, a regulator isn't going to necessarily be able to keep its finger on that, especially in terms of collecting taxes. So this is evolving. We need to understand where it's going. Like I said, it can't be prohibited, so we need to figure out how do we work with it. And there's, Caribbean regulators, because of this condition, have been very reluctant to work with it. In particularly the issue of money laundering. A lot of Caribbean countries have been in the past and were recently released from, or in some cases still are on the gray list for the FATF anti-money laundering. This means that, there's a need to be extra careful if you're a central banker to make sure that you are living up to all of the international regulations and monitoring that goes along with being compliant and not being on the gray list. Anti-money laundering is one concern. And because of things like this, because of there is an opportunity to use these technologies for bad, or as part of a scam. Because of this, there's a lot of mistrust that exists of this technology. In a couple well-known cases, Silk Road was a very high-profile darknet website for selling drugs using Bitcoin. Mt. Gox was an exchange that basically blew up and someone stole all the money. These are very high-profile failures for digital currency, and they scare a lot of people. And they should scare a lot of people because it's a problem. But that's not everything. And there's other uses for this technology, And it is incumbent upon vendors and the digital currency industry to work with regulators to make them understand, how can things like this be prevented or worked around, or what cases can be made to use this in a good light. I mentioned that regulators were reluctant to work with, to engage, shall we say, reluctant to engage with digital currency issues. We know this because we created a survey instrument that asked central banks all over the Caribbean, what is your opinion on this? And we got very few responses in our survey, partly because there was a reluctance even to come out and make a statement that says, well, this is what our central bank is believing at this point. Now, this was 18 months ago. Maybe things have changed. I would like to rerun this survey sometime soon and see, well, this is how things have evolved. We've gone from a stage where countries are even reluctant to talk about this to, at least we can hope that there's an opinion that they can put forward so that vendors know where they stand and how they can work to make this legitimate. The study went in particular part of it is just seeing, hey, what's going on in the Caribbean with digital currency. We found, a few cases, digital ATMs. Digital ATMs, there was a bit drop event that was kind of a high-profile thing that just didn't happen. It was supposed to happen in Dominica. There was an expectation it would happen, but then the public got kind of nervous, and then the government got kind of nervous. And, if there's that level of distrust of it, that's why it didn't happen. And, that's too bad, because that was a whole bunch of money, of value that was going to be dropped into this country that didn't occur. This last one, risk-averse commercial banking sector stymies potential mobile money services. We also heard very clearly that there is a problem with digital currency vendors are not able to get banking services in this region. Or, if you go to this one bank on this one island, they'll talk to you. That's not really a good way to run an economy. You want banks competing for your business and coming to you and wanting to make loans. It sounds like it's much more difficult than that, and it really shouldn't be. Part of that risk aversion has to do with the money laundering issue. So we've concluded that better payment systems are needed. We just had a whole panel on that topic, so I won't go into detail. One of those things that wasn't mentioned on the panel was lowering the cost of remittance services. This is what remittances cost in the Caribbean. So we're looking at between 7.7 and almost 12% of the money you send through Western Union or whatever gets taken by that service to deliver the money. There's been a promise that, if we could use Bitcoin for remittances, a lot of this margin would go away and it would wind up in people's pockets. That's been a promise. Hasn't happened yet. There's a lot of problems with that model. One is, Bitcoin fluctuates all over the place. I wouldn't be comfortable sending money to someone in another country knowing that while I'm sending it, the price could go down by 40%. Another problem is simply, the cost to get money into Bitcoin and then to get it out of Bitcoin. There was some hype that this would be, essentially a costless system. It's not going to be a costless system. It's possible it could shave a few percentage points off of these costs, but so far, like I said, it hasn't been delivered yet. And now, Shiva, we'll go over the SWOT analysis. There you go.
Just vote. All right. So actually, this SWOT was performed in 2014, even preceding the study, and I'm glad to say that even some of the strengths, opportunities, threats that I looked at in 2014, even preceding the study, are still being talked about today, not only by ECLAC, but also by the Commonwealth Secretariat, other parties. So for instance, if we look at opportunity, you would recall earlier today, the Commonwealth Secretariat mentioned that there's an opportunity for network analysis and cyber analysis of virtual currencies, digital currency. So definitely that's an opportunity we can look at within the Caribbean here, developing those type of skill sets and competencies within our own people. There was a question from the back of the room about entrepreneurs looking at some of these things, and the entrepreneurial opportunity here would be the development of different types of payment systems. There's an opportunity for regulatory framework development. So rather than await what is taking place in London or New York or Singapore, we can actually take control and actually propose regulatory framework changes to bring regulation around digital currency. There are some trends, and we've taken note of some trends within the report. But as we have here now within the Caribbean, we have a viable entrepreneurial drive towards digital currency. And working with regulators, we can come up with our own frameworks. The strengths of digital currency, because it's decentralized, anonymous, well, anonymous is a question mark. The issue of digital currency really revolves around the aspect of no double spend. There have been several revisions to electronic cash or eCash solutions proposed prior to Bitcoin in 2008. The problem that they all suffered from was the reuse of tokens. If I pay you one token, one electronic token, I can quickly pay that to someone else. That's double spend. And that's what Bitcoin, that was so revolutionary about Bitcoin. The risk of a double spend is significantly reduced. And that's why Bitcoin has really sparked an innovation drive in itself, and as well as with subsequent revisions or subsequent alt currencies or other digital currencies that have come along. The aspect of minimal transaction fees, that is a strength, but as Bobby mentioned, when you apply regulatory controls over that, when you apply AML, KYC controls over that, there's a cost to that. So really and truly, the minimal transaction fees that are there, when you layer these controls over any type of solution, that adds to the cost. That being said, it still is being touted as a cheaper transmission fees than existing solutions out there. The weaknesses, and Commonwealth Secretariat spoke to some of these this morning. Consumer protection. What they are doing in the UK is that they have recognized consumer protection as an issue, and they are looking towards standardization with the British Standard Institute to come up with recommendations for consumer protection, as well as tackling these aspects of money laundering. Money laundering is a significant concern with respect to digital currency, and it was mentioned again by the Commonwealth Secretary this morning that FATF guidance on digital currency published in June 2015, but treats with that, but it treats with just that. There are other risks that need to be catered to. And the threats. So, I mean, one of the threats basically is if we don't fully explore this issue within the Caribbean, are we missing out on a potential opportunity to help ourselves for economic development, for better remittance solutions? So it's worth investigating further. And like Bobby said, I will completely advocate with the position that that survey can be redone at another date. Hopefully we can do that again. What Caribbean authorities remain focused on the weaknesses and threats within the digital currency industry. And this is against what, this is not similar to what you would find, this is very dissimilar to what you would find in more developed economies. So for instance, in the UK, what they have done is they are tackling the issue of consumer protection, they are tackling money laundering and tax evasion, but they're also stimulating innovation. They've dedicated £10,000 towards research in digital currency. So we can't hide from this thing. It doesn't help us if we try to hide from this thing. We must look at it as an opportunity and try to mitigate against the threats or try to mitigate against the weaknesses or the risks. Fearing it doesn't help. And they are also looking towards developing better electronic payment systems and new business models, which we have the potential to do. There's nothing stopping us from exploring these opportunities within our own academic institutions here. Payments in perspective. So this diagram was put together to explain this thing. How can Caribbean authorities understand what is digital currency relative to e-payment systems or money, basically? So money, if you start with money, there's a conversion point, there's the bank. And money is then turned into electronic money. It maintains legal tender status. In moving from money to what is stored on your credit card or your debit card, that is legal tender. You can then use that electronic money for wire transfers or e-commerce payment cards via your debit card or your credit card. And what we heard from the last panel is that some of the local merchant account solutions that are being offered by commercial banks here are somewhat not very accessible by the people who need it, by small businesses, by SMEs. And so what you see happening instead is there's an over-reliance on other payment providers like PayPal and these type of things. But still, that is on the electronic money side. And we're starting from the familiar and then we move into towards the more novel stuff. Under the heading of money, we also have mobile money. And we'll get to Stefan's point a little later on. And mobile money can be used for utility payment. Tracy mentioned that we already have things like top-up. We already have things like utility payments, these type of things. Apple Pay is an NFC payment that he spoke about as well. Then there's this other concept of mobile money, which uses airtime or credit as the medium. So we're not talking about legal tender status here. We're talking about some other thing which still is able to transmit value. And that's what we need to think about. Don't think about whether it's money or not. Think about it as a transmission of value. That's it. And these type of mobile money solutions are found in alternate infrastructure or areas as opposed to complementary or collaborative. I'll explain that further in another diagram. This type of mobile money can be used for peer-to-peer transfers, purchases, international remittances, and we have examples of these in the M-Pesa solution. We also have Transcell from Jamaica. We'll be hearing from Transcell in Jamaica in the next couple of days at this conference. And then we have stuff like digital currency. Again, is different than electronic money. It's just a value, something that pegs a value against this electronic token. And the conversion point is an exchange, similar to what BIT is proposing. That's a digital currency exchange. And what the exchange does, it takes fiat and it gives you these tokens. That's all. But this is the natural regulatory point for any intervention by a regulator who cares about AML or KYC. Digital currency can then be used for ATM services or peer-to-peer service or even remittance services. It could also be used for e-commerce. And you have remittance services like BitPesa, peer-to-peer via SMS. You can transfer from one party to another party. And this enables SMEs to receive payment via payment processors in this e-commerce solution. So this diagram is really to help authorities understand that it is not as revolutionary as you're thinking it is. It's just a medium of transmitting value. That in plain, most simple, basic point, we're just transferring value. That's all. Mobile money, a little bit about that is that in performing the study, we drew some parallels with mobile money because we had some experts coming in on mobile money as well. And we found certain deficiencies there. We had someone from a position of authority in the Trinidad government from a legal perspective who said that the Trinidad and Tobago government looked at mobile money, but because we don't have geographic dispersion of the population like in Suriname or Guyana, or we don't have a lack of banking infrastructure as you would find in Haiti, mobile money solutions will not work here. And this takes me to the point that Stefan raised. Whereas we're not advocating for a copy paste of M-Pesa. M-Pesa may not work for us. There are other solutions. So depending on where you fall on this continuum of services within mobile money, and as you can see here, this PayM is a consortium of banks in the UK that uses your mobile phone number to transfer money, transfer value between parties. All you do is you have someone's phone number, and you can transfer value to them. Apple Pay is also seen as being a collaboration phase on this mobile continuum of services. So what we're proposing or finding solutions that can work for us in the Caribbean here, we're not saying to cut and paste M-Pesa. There's a whole continuum of services that we can explore. And it's about finding a use case that works for a need or persons in need within our population. Too complicated to get into right now, but this is the various types of mobile money solutions, financial solutions that can be put forward on a mobile payment platform. Let's put it that way. So you start all the way from point of sale, mobile wallets, microfinance, insurance services. All these things could potentially be put forward in a digital financial services solution. And that's why I think the ITU is using that term rather than just plain old mobile money, because it's really evolved. It's evolved beyond just moving value around to all of these different types of service that you can offer. You would have remember Vijay mentioned something about data analytics. The habits or the transactional habits of a user using something like this can be potentially mined to uncover patterns where you can then predict who's a good consumer for this type of service, or who can we target to better a solution for that target audience. Some of the mobile money examples that we uncovered in the study, these are some of them. As I said before, we're going to hear from Haiti. Stefan is going to talk about the Haiti mobile money solution tomorrow. We're going to hear about Jamaica, Transcell. We're also going to hear from them tomorrow as well. You.
All right. As Shiva said, we're going to hear all sorts of interesting things about the mobile money experience in Haiti tomorrow. But it is the I would say the premier example we have in the Caribbean of mobile money being tried, and so I want to make sure I get my 2 cents in before we hear from the real experts. Basically, what happened with mobile money in the Caribbean is, as you know, there was a horrible in Haiti. As you know, there was a horrible earthquake there in 2010, and after that, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and USAID came in with $10 million in prize money to award to organizations that started mobile money products, and they set up. It was a prize, so they set up. If you meet this benchmark, you'll get $1.5 million, and if you're the second one to meet this benchmark, you'll get $1 million. So this was seen as, post earthquake rebuilding. One potential use case of having a robust mobile money system would be to distribute aid money. Money was flowing in to rebuild the country. There was a need to figure out how to get it to the people who needed it. Mobile money was seen as a way to accomplish that. So what happened is a couple networks stepped in, Tcash and Chocho. Chocho was Digicel, and Tcash was it was another mobile operator. So they established these networks, and they met their benchmarks. They got the first benchmark was just setting up the system, and then having 100,000 transactions, and then there were incentives that if you're the first to get to this many transactions, you get the big prize. The problem there, I think, was that you set up an incentive to get as many transactions as possible, which is different from setting up an incentive to build a sustainable network that everybody can use. So you had promotions, hey, use your mobile money to play the lottery, or if you pay for something with mobile money, we'll give you a bit of cash back because we know that some of that money will come back to us eventually as part of the prize money. So ultimately, a system built on bribing your users to use it isn't going to be sustainable in the long run. And that's basically what happened. Initially, they were able to get up to 840,000 subscribers, and as soon as the punch bowl was taken away, that kind of fell off to 60,000 active users as of December 2014. Digicel did relaunch this product last year. I'm not sure how it's going. I wish them the best of luck. This is I would say it's very common in the world to try to launch a mobile money system, maybe not using this prize money method of doing it, but to launch a mobile money system and then it kind of fizzles. These stats that I got, 840,000 and 60,000, those were from a study that looked at mobile money situations in 22 different countries, and it said, well, why did mobile money take off in these countries, while in all these other countries, the majority of countries, there's what they called a failure to launch. Haiti, apparently had a failure to launch, which is not at all uncommon. What are the reasons for it? The reasons that they cited was perhaps too much regulation. There was a maximum amount of money that you could keep in your account, which for most Haitians was probably a pretty good amount of money. But you wonder, well, who are the early adopters in the system? It's probably going to be the wealthier Haitians. Who need to pass money around, and they were effectively locked out of it because of the low regulatory limits for how much they were able to store. I think a major problem with the system was the lack of interoperability. A new mobile money system was created, and the first thing that happened was the market was split in two, so that one kind of money couldn't be traded for the other kind of money. I think that's a big mistake, especially if you're trying to build something big. You need to get the critical mass, and if you're breaking the critical mass in half right off the bat, that's going to be a problem. I also worry about lack of interoperability because, what are the ramifications here for telecommunications competition? If you have Digicel running a mobile money system, and there's a competitor that maybe their system isn't as good, or they don't have it, and they're not able to easily trade money across these. That's a market advantage, which isn't necessarily going to help bring down the cost of telecommunications. We already have a situation where in the Caribbean, so many people have more than one SIM card as part of their phone because they know, well, to call this person I need to use B-Mobile, to call this person I use Digicel. So you have two SIM cards or two phones. When we hear, well, there's 150% mobile penetration in this country or something like that, that's not actually a good sign. It means that consumers are having to spend extra money to get extra services that they don't need to work around the limitations of a marketplace that has been split up and does not interact well with each other without having a cost associated. I could see the same thing happening with mobile money. If there's two systems, and if I want to get money to another system, I got to pay 1 or 2%. That's going to be a barrier. If I have a bank, I write a check, another bank, it might take a few days to clear, but the other bank's going to take that. I don't have to have multiple bank accounts as I would in a situation where I wanted to do business with more than one mobile money organization. you don't have a different bank account for every bank, so you shouldn't have to have an account in a different account for every mobile money system. Recommendations. Authorities need to get an understanding of both the opportunities and the risks. This guy talks a lot about opportunities. I talk a lot about risks. That's just the way it worked out. I think we both believe that there's a future to this technology, and it needs to be understood. There's also a risk of doing nothing. That risk is being left behind, and that could happen. I would also point to the bottom bullet point here. There are risks. Regulators are concerned about these risks. It's up to service providers to put their mind at ease. One means of doing this we considered that came up as in our expert group meeting was, is there a need for an interest group of people in the financial technology industry to be able to go to regulators and say, well, this is, as an industry, this is what we need to prosper, and we want to hear your concerns and make sure that our members are in line with what they need to provide you as far as your need to do your job as oversight. If there was an organization that could play that role, I think it would do a lot to help promote this technology in the region. We also, there's a lot of work that's already been done out there, so part of what we have done in this document is basically provide a reading list for these are the areas, these are the documents that you should read so that you can come up to speed on being able to make decisions in this space. The Caribbean is not alone. Other countries are going through this, have gone through this. You can look to their solutions. To take the example of the United States, my own country, New York has set up a solution, a regulatory system called BitLicense. New York being home to Wall Street, probably going to be very influential in terms of what the global standards are going to be. So there's going to be some advantage to looking at what those regulations are and adapting them to the Caribbean. But if you can have a situation where if a Caribbean company is in line with the requirements of the New York BitLicense, that means they can also go to New York, and it's a lot easier for them to do business there. That's an advantage. The United States also has a pretty big disadvantage. That's a regulation that comes from the state of New York. It does not come from the United States Treasury. The state of California has its own regulations. Who knows? Maybe the state of Wisconsin has some. It's a problem. There's 50 different states, 50 different sets of rules. That could happen here. There's a lot of different countries in CARICOM. They each have their own interests. Each one is likely to come up with its own set of rules. You got to make sure that those rules can work well together. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation like the United States, where I would say the United States is not the global leader in digital currency. I would say the United Kingdom is, where the United Kingdom has a centralized regulatory authority. They've done a very good job.
Bobby, if I could just add, that was not by accident. The UK took a decisive decision to become the financial capital that will, make its mark on digital currency. And the approach that they took, it is somewhat explained within the report fully. But starting from their call for information, reaching out to the entrepreneurs, developing an encompassing approach to cater both to the risk and the opportunities. It didn't happen by accident.
That's right. They made a call for information that brought in all the stakeholders and had everybody contribute, and they've had some really good documents and information that has come out of that. And I think anyone who's making policy in this area should take a look at those documents. Singapore is on there just because you know, they figured out how to incorporate encouraging innovation. You know, it's part of their budget. It's part of, you know, what they do, and they are also another center for global digital currency development. This document came out well, it came out in January, but it was written a bit before that. So there's a number of recent developments that didn't get into the document. So I'll just go over them real quick. The top one over there is called Ethereum. It's a new blockchain-based technology that implements something called smart contracts, which use basically it's embedding code onto the blockchain so that, you know, if a certain conditions are met, then you know, funds will be released in a certain way. So it's a way to write contracts using code rather than legal language. Now, I've been a software developer for most of my life. I'm concerned about writing contracts with code because I know how many bugs I've written. So we'll see where that goes. One thing that has come out of Ethereum very recently is something called the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, something like that. Basically, it's a company that's been built on top of the Ethereum blockchain, and there's a mechanism by which the people who have paid their Ethereum into this company can vote on how the DAO spends its money and makes investments and hopefully gets a return. They've raised $150 million, which is kind of impressive. Although right after they raised it, a number of security researchers came out and said, "Hold on a second. Here's all the holes in your software that maybe you should address before you actually go ahead with this plan." If it ever does work, it's kind of going to be a brave new world. I mean, what do you do? How do you regulate a company that you know, doesn't have a CEO, doesn't have you know, how does a company like this pay taxes? I have no idea. But it's something that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with. This graphic over here is the ID 2020 initiative, which is a recent initiative that has come out of the the Sustainable Development Goals to create a means of providing a common identity to people that is, you know, not necessarily provided through the government, although likely endorsed by governments. They're reaching out to the private sector to provide the technology, likely using some sort of blockchain technology to implement this. There was recently a conference in New York on this, ID 2020. So this is, you know, this is a thing and it's gaining momentum. The thing on the bottom there, Open Bazaar, I mentioned Silk Road earlier. This is the next or the current iteration of Silk Road. There are still darknet sites that are figuring out how to use this currency, this digital technology to conduct transactions, perhaps not under the eye of the law. So the current iteration is called Open Bazaar. You know, from a technology point of view, it's pretty cool. From a regulatory point of view, something to keep your eye on. So, and now I'll pass you on to Shiva.
Right, so we're ending now. And then moving forward, somebody recommended reading that you can go through. While you've been presented with the report, there are the 2 EGM studies which you should also take a look at, which really explores the Caribbean exploration of this issue of digital currency. And whereas we looked at it from the perspective of a transfer of value mechanism, as Bobby pointed out, there are a whole areas opening up now which are more concerned with the underlying technology for digital currency, which is called blockchain. Now, that really has the potential to revolutionize monetary systems as we know it. And in fact, central banks around the world are looking at blockchain technology as potentially being an evolution for monetary systems. So forget everything about Bitcoin. The underlying technology itself can be used by another party. They can create their own blockchain and use that to transfer value. And central banks, like we mentioned, the UK is taking a lead on this. Bank of England is one of the central banks that is looking, putting a significant look into blockchain technology. So look at the ECLAC reports with respect to digital currency and transfer of value mechanisms. Look at the Commonwealth Secretariat report. We had an excellent presentation on that this morning, which looks at, whereas we focused on the Caribbean, the Commonwealth Secretariat report looked, around the Commonwealth. And they complement each other quite nicely, I believe. I'm not just saying that because, anyway. The FATF virtual currency guidance, that was put out in 2015, July, and regulators may be concerned or may have an interest in taking a look at that and how that could be potentially applied within the Caribbean here. And feel free to conduct your own research. I mean, this initiative that started with ECLAC started with a conversation. Me, Peter, and Bobby, we had a conversation about certain areas that we could look at doing some research in. Cybersecurity was one of them. Digital currency was the other. Digital currency won out, and it brought us here to today. So I would advocate that, regulators within the Caribbean here, economic development, innovation, entrepreneurs, we have all these type of interests. There's further research to be conducted here. In fact, what I suggested to ECLAC is we started with digital currency, but then we started to look at mobile money, and now we're hearing a lot about blockchain. We can look further at mobile money and blockchain. That to me, that's where further research can go from an ECLAC perspective, but that's their decision. Me personally, I provide strategic ICT and information security. I have put together a workshop to assist financial regulators in understanding these issues, which go into the ECLAC study. It goes into central bank concerns. It goes into this issue of debanking and de-risking. It explains some of the points from the Commonwealth Secretariat report and an IMF report. Again, some of these things are complementary and spoken to within the various reports. But this workshop is available for financial regulators, TTSEC, FIU, whoever may be interested. And so, I'm available for that. And that's it.